Swast India. We are delighted to introduce Stellar Days, Starry Nights, and this session is presented by Red FM. The incomparable Shobhaa Day stands as a class by herself. Successful novelist, columnist, screenwriter, and beauteous model. Her debut novel, Starry Nights, was a runaway bestseller, followed by a succession of stellar hits. Her books, spanning candid memoirs and thoughtful reflections and sizzling fiction about celebrities in high society, have given her cult status and dedicated fan following. A natural provocateur, her writings always manage to be topical, outspoken, and entertaining. Listen in to her sharp and witty take on modern life as she speaks to author and activist Gurmehar Kaur about her books and writings, as well as life, love, and learnings. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now invite the speakers one by one, who I believe are already standing behind me. Shobhaa Day is a best-selling author of over 20 books and a widely read columnist. She is known for her outspoken, irreverent views, making her one of India's most respected opinion shapers. She is the trailblazer in the field of women's writing. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Shobhaa Day. Gurmehar Kaur is a social activist who published her first book, believe it or not, Small Acts of Freedom, at JLF in 2018. In 2017, Kaur was listed by Time magazine as a next generation leader, a global listing of 10 young men and women making a difference in the world. Her second book, The Young and the Restless, Youth and Politics in India, was shortlisted for the Sahitya Akademi Yuva Puraskar in 2021. She co-founded Citizens for Public Leadership, CPL, an independent non-partisan movement focused on advocating for progressive public policy in India. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Gurmehar Kaur. And I don't know what I'm doing here on stage in the presence of such fine women, so I will quietly, quickly leave the stage and hand you over to the panel. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We must follow what was dictated to us so very charmingly.
Well, namaskar, everyone. Today I want to Shobhaa Day. I want to chat to Shobhaa Day, who needs no introduction. The sexiest woman in Indian publishing, an icon, a household name, the fierce and fearless in a way that I want to be when I want to grow up, about love, life, and wisdom. So thank you so much, Shobhaa, for being here.
Thank you very much. I think Shashi Tharoor is going to object strongly to that introduction, because certainly he's the sexiest man or person in LitFest or anywhere on earth, according to a lot of his admirers and fans. So watch what you say about good looks. We might have a war going on. But thank you so very much, JLF organizers, 15th year. Sean Joy, I don't see his white mane. He's so easy to detect in a crowd of 5,000. I don't see William Dalrymple. I don't see Namita, but all of them and the entire group of volunteers over the years, for 15 years, they have done a stellar job. And to be back in Jaipur after 2 years where no one could, we couldn't imagine our lives without an actual LitFest and meeting readers, getting that energy from the crowd. It was really not the same thing. And after a point, I said, I'm not going to do Zoom calls. I'm not going to do virtual LitFest, because a writer needs readers. A writer needs to face those readers, interact with them, whether they have something wonderful to say or not. But in isolation, it was a calamitous time for the world. We're all just about pulling out of it. And just so happy to be here. Of course, the organizers could have done something about the weather, and clearly God wasn't listening to them, because today is a beastly day. But look at the crowd, look at the enthusiasm. Thank you all very much for putting up with the heat, and I hope we have an engaging enough session and it's worth your while to sweat it out with both of us. Thank you again.
Shobhaa, so I want to begin by asking you, you've written for audiences across generations for multiple decades, but I want to go back to the beginning. I want to go back to, where were you when you decided to put pen to paper? Where were you in life, and what were your intentions with writing?
My intentions in life was to be a vagabond forever, which I think I am. And writing gave me that opportunity, because I couldn't see myself as a dentist, for example, right? or a chartered accountant, I don't have the brains for it, or a mathematician because I can't count 2 and 2. So writing came very easily, very naturally to me. It was my solace. I fell in love with words very early in life. I go back to my early diaries and read them sometimes, and not with too much embarrassment, I might add, because they were never about me. It was always about the other. It was always about observations. It was always about the external, the world. And that started maybe at the age of 8, 10, 12. I have diaries going back to age 14, certainly, but I was writing much before that. So putting pen to paper was not the most difficult decision. Had someone told me to become an orthopedic surgeon, that would have been a difficult decision. This was something organic. It was something that came naturally and wonderfully to me. Hello, hello. And the silver mane has arrived. So it was something that was so completely, it completed me. I felt good when I wrote. I still feel very good when I write.
You know, you talk about feeling very good when you write, but what has that journey been? How have things changed since the first time you published your piece till today?
Well, since the first time I published a piece, that was over 55 years ago. I've been writing columns for 50 years. So I don't quite remember exactly what I felt.
Yeah.
I guess I felt very pleased. You know, you see your name in print, you see a byline, your editor shows faith in you, your readers respond to you. It is fantastic. That is honestly the only reason why writers write.
Yeah.
It's to get that kind of acknowledgement, that kind of love, kind of recognition from the readers and no one else. And if you have an editor who has sufficient faith in you, especially for a book, it makes it all really worthwhile. But to say it was a cakewalk, certainly not. I had the most merciless reviews anyone writing in Southeast Asia could possibly have received. And Reuters did a story of the record number of the worst reviews any writer has received. And that was for my first book, which continues to sell well and continues to be a bestseller 40 years later. So I guess I must have done something right, but believe me, the last thing, and this is because you are young, beautiful, bold, and wonderful. You are, and just own it, you know, just own it. And don't be apologetic for anything you ever say, ever in any platform. It's not easy. I won't say it's easy at all. But if you can survive that first hiccup and that first little hump, and you know within yourself, you feel confident enough that I have opted for something, this goes with the territory. Yeah. And if the heat gets too much, you don't have to be in that kitchen, you know, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And the critics can be harsh. And my one word of advice to you as a very young and beautiful lady, never pay the slightest attention to what your contemporaries say. Honestly, listen to people your own age who may be not in the same situation as contemporaries who want to become writers but have not quite succeeded, or any of them. Listen to maybe older people, but mainly listen to your own voice and find your own truth and have the courage to say, I will stand by that regardless. So contemporaries can be vicious. So to go back to that question, the earlier one, which was a very charmingly sexist comment, but we'll let it go. So one of the first reviews, which then set the tone for reviews to follow, came from a contemporary and a writer himself, who headlined his piece, "Her looks sell her books." So every time, and at age 74, I encountered the same line. Last week, in someone reviewing my latest book, which is Lockdown Liaisons, again, the same old repetition of "her looks sell her books." To all these men out there, especially the men, I always wish them well and say, let's hope your looks will also sell your books.
You know, Shobhaa, you've been a pioneer in many things. You know, the things that you were writing in the 90s, in the 90s were groundbreaking, were incredibly progressive for their times. And as you pointed out, my little sexist comments, what we've seen happening today, what was once progressive in the 90s may not be progressive for the 2020 models. And you've been writing for a very long time. how do you ever look back at some of your work and how do you feel content with it? Are there things you might want to change?
I have a little trick which I can share with you. I never reread anything that's published and that's written because I'm already on to something else and something else and something else. And I find that's a bit of a waste of an exercise, it's a waste of your time and energy because you'll always find something that's terrible. I mean, every time I read, if I'm forced to read, even do a reading at a book club or something, I cringe and I say, oh my God, did I really write that? How dreadful. I could always have written it better. So it consumes you in a way that sometimes inhibits you from what you want to say then. What I said then was relevant then. I stand by every word of it, but that was 50, 40, 30, 20 years ago. What I'm saying today is relevant to me and my readers now. So I don't have to look back, and I never do, because life itself is fragile and short. And the pandemic, if it has taught us anything, it's to curate your own life in a way, edit your own life and your memories in a way that they're not a negative energy force. So you get on with things, you get on to the next thing, you feel positive. And I look forward to every new column, every new book, anything that I take up with the same level of passion and enthusiasm. And I think that's the only way to keep going, because you'll get stuck. Yeah. You'll read a book or a column and you'll just feel, oh my God, what was I even thinking? You should never feel that way. You should just feel cool.
You say that one must feel cool about it, but what's happening now, and a lot of writers who've been writing for a very long time have faced this, that readers are going back to their earlier work and might find something which they might find problematic now. And there is a lot of canceling happening on the internet. Is that something that you care about? Is it something that you worry about?
No, not at all, because I'm very active on social media, as you may be aware, but I do not respond and engage with anonymous trolls. I will not get into a tutu meme with any of them, because it's so easy to hide behind a veil of a lack of identity. So I say what I need to say. I say it, and I put my name to it, and I will stand up for it, and I will defend it. And it may not be someone else's truth. It may not be palatable to whoever is responding in a negative way to it, but it is my truth. And as a writer, that's all we actually have, our truths. And if we share them fearlessly, chances are readers will get it, because instinctively they will know that, this is authenticity. This is not someone, it's not a poser. It's not someone assuming some kind of a position to placate some political group or some social group, or even their friends and family for that matter. So that level of confidence has to come from within. It's got to be your inner voice. Only listen to that, and only then will you be able to communicate what you wish to say. Those who get it. Those who don't, well, it's too bad.
Talking about authenticity and talking about, I want to, let's talk about female pleasure, something that you've written about extensively. In 2020, when the conversation about female pleasure is still in its very nascent stages, what made you put this topic at the heart of almost all your books?
I felt extremely strongly that women in our society in particular, I can't comment on other societies. I happen to be in India, I live in Indian, and I'm very proud of that identity. But in our society, women are expected to be somehow sexless. They should have no desires. And if they do have desires, keep those desires to yourself, keep them under wraps, shove them under a carpet. But on the surface, you have to be chaste. When I read a very telling comment by a retired High Court judge who had his own very original theory about how peacocks reproduce. And he said they do not reproduce the way other birds and other creatures on earth do. They shed tears, and those tears are drunk by the peahen. And that's how the next generation of peacocks actually come forth into this world. I mean, they would love for women to also assume that kind of thing, that we are drinking some man's tears and producing babies, rather than think of us having a sex life, being in bed with a man with our clothes off and being happy about it and enjoying the experience. And this is a kind of hypocritical double standard rubbish that we've been brainwashed for years. So when I wrote that first book, there wasn't even any explicit overt sex in it. It was what people were imagining. And I loved that because, so it's not me writing dirty, it's their dirty minds, if you want to call them dirty at all, imagining what was not even there.
Yes.
But it was important. It was important for me to say it because female sexuality is simply not acknowledged in our society. And women do not have a voice, or they're not meant to talk about it. And I didn't, go out, with a little banner saying, I'm going to talk about sex. No, it's what I wanted to do. And I did it. And when I stopped doing it, then said, oh my God, this book has no sex. I'd be turning the pages. Where are those, where are those pages? I wrote what I wanted to write. I wasn't catering. I wasn't pandering. If I wanted to write about sex, I would. It's my call. No one can dictate it to me, to any writer. But at the same time, when I was writing, I mean, all my other contemporaries and seniors like Khushwant Singh and others, there was erotic poetry, there was erotic fiction, there was erotic everything, but always from a man's perspective. And they were never judged for it. And no one made comments about Khushwant Singh on a stage or comments about how he looked or what he was wearing, etc. And to this day, a woman there will always be a comment to do with her physicality. I don't have a problem with it, but I can give it right back when I'm with a dishy looking man on stage and say, oh, aren't you a cutie? And I like to see how he reacts. Most men are stupid enough to be flattered, but that's okay. If they think talking down to me in that way or paying me this kind of a compliment somehow takes away from who I am or what I want to say, or from any of whatever my writing, the hierarchy of writers, I really don't care. Yeah. I'd rather look like this than like Khushwant Singh.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about conversations about sex, sexuality, female pleasure. I know you've got daughters, and you've spoken about female pleasure and sexuality to generations, all of us. How are those conversations back home?
If I'm blushing, I have reason to, because the daughters pretend, oh no, that's really my mother, the writer, has nothing to do with the lady I'm sitting at lunch with or having tea with or traveling with. And we really don't want to know, mother, please stop it. So, I would be surprised if a young person of your age group, if your mother were to write as freely, I'm sure you'd be equally you wouldn't go up to her and say, hey, what about that page and what you've written on it? So I get it. I respect them for keeping that distance. And I respect myself enough not to force conversations on them, which they may not be comfortable with. However, I have to say that I have 7 grandchildren. And when it comes to talking about, for example, a girl, my granddaughter came of age only 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she's a footballer, so she's kind of much more into sports. But yes, she did get her period. And she was deeply embarrassed and disturbed by it. And so yes, that conversation from a grandmother to a young girl to assure her that it will not in any way impact her football ambitions was an important conversation to have.
Yeah.
So yes, one uses one's discretion.
No, completely. And I want to go back to your books now, and I want to go back to these female characters, who are living these extraordinary, liberated, emancipated lives. Who has been your favorite character to write?
Not all of them have been liberated and emancipated, really speaking. They've all come out on top at the end somehow. The protagonists, I don't like female victimization card being pulled out.
Yeah.
And we have enough stress in our lives to deal with. We know the realities of being a woman in any society, and certainly in our society. We know the struggle. But do I want to exploit that struggle because I want to make some kind of a statement? No, I don't. So if my women are projected as non-victims who deal with whatever life, whichever curve ball comes in their direction, it neither endorses a certain point of view and nor is it judgmental, because each woman is different, each man is different. And we are not here to judge one another, and especially not after the pandemic, which has taught us so much about just living in a peaceful and harmonious way for our own mental health.
Yeah.
So the ladies I like, I suppose the first book is always somehow special to most writers. It's the most self-revelatory book. In many ways, you cannibalize your own life and your own experiences. So Karuna of Socialite Evenings, I really like. And I'd love to see her being played by someone like Vidya Balan. All sorts of offers come to me with sort of ridiculous suggestions of what to do with the books, which so far I have not encouraged, because I feel a little possessive. I don't want to just give it away to someone. And
but if you were to, what book would you give away for a movie?
Well, out of the novels, there are several. Even the last one, Srila Ji, which is about a certain lady from a certain background from Kolkata, and who goes through quite a gamut of experiences and is a very, very overtly sexual person, and wonderful and accomplished and a survivor on all levels and fronts, I think would lend itself very well to cinema. I mean, look at the success of Gangubai, for example. If you deconstruct Gangubai's life, it's hardly an idealized life. But the story was compelling because of the way it was shot and the way Alia interpreted her role. And of course, the way Sanjay Leela Bansali treated Kamatipura and the red light area, which I know very well in Mumbai as a journalist. I've spent a lot of time there talking to those ladies. And he could have taken the other route. He could have shown brutality in sex because it is a brutal place. He could have shown those girls being attacked violently and sexual acts which were abhorrent, but he didn't. And it was more suggested than actually shown on screen. So I respect him for that. So yeah.
You know, talking about just picking up from you not wanting your characters to be victims. In an interview, you say that you refuse to give up and be a harmless old lady. And it's a wonderful interview. You know, you are very opinionated and your work is deeply, deeply political. But in the sort of hostile environment that we're living in, where if your opinion is not aligned with the world's opinion, they really troll you, they really come back at you. Do you ever find yourself self-censoring?
That term doesn't exist for me, really. I'm being very honest. I put it out there and take what comes later. Often it's very unpleasant, and I don't mean trolls. I mean actions like being charged with at one time for sedition and treason, followed by contempt in the assembly proceedings, contempt notices, followed by saying rude things about a local parochial Maharashtrian party, though being a Maharashtrian myself. And they sent 400 people to our home to gag me, blacken my face, etc., etc. So it's an adventurous life as a writer, I can say that, but I wouldn't want it any other way.
And what about, and that's you, Shobhaa. Censorship does not, like you said, exist in your dictionary. What about when you're writing your columns and the censorship comes from editors? How do you use your craft to manage that?
Well, the idea in today's environment, where editors themselves are not very comfortable carrying what they might see as a militant opinion, the idea is to subvert it all and do it anyway. But you do it in a way that sometimes slips by the editor's scrutiny, but the reader gets it. At the end of the day, the reader has to get it. So it's not about an editor telling me that you can't write this or you can't write that. It's always just subtly suggested that, the environment being what it is, and our media house is facing a lot of problems, and we depend on government advertising, the usual story. But I think I found many ways around it. So I'm really not complaining. You still need to say what you need to say because that's your job as a columnist. And I'm not there as an apologist for any political party. I have no ideology. I'm not aligned to any political party. I'm not obligated to any political party. I don't want free gas coming to my house, or a petrol agency, or a station, or what you call it, a gas station in Delhi, or a piece of land somewhere to start a writers' academy. I don't want anything from anybody. So they don't have anything on me unless it's something that I say, which I wouldn't. which borders on, inciting rioting or blood on the streets, which I wouldn't do anyway, or with something that bends the law in any way. As long as I'm not breaking any law, I'm not using abusive language, I'm expressing an opinion that I'm willing to defend in the Supreme Court, and I will not stop. So either they get used to it, or, well, we'll see if things change.
No, absolutely brilliant. But I do want to go back to this thing you spoke about in your answer, which is you found a way. And there are multiple aspiring writers in the audience. And I would want to know, what are these strategies? How do you find your way around to say your opinion, even when the world is attempting to, sort of censor you? What are those strategies?
Well, the satire and wit, which people do not accept generally. I hate to bring gender into this, but a person, a man writing satire and biting satire is called brilliant, and a woman is called a bitch. She's just nasty. She's negative. She's not even funny. The exact same thing would be, the response would be very different.
Yeah.
So, and also senior writers, say, for example, when V.S. Naipaul once said at a Lit Fest, I think it was in Jaipur, and he said, I can tell from the first 3 lines of a book or a column that it's a woman writing it. I mean, what kind of a remark was that?
Yeah.
I found it deeply offensive.
Yeah.
And also it was condescending and putting sort of women in their place, that you're only capable of writing vanilla. And no, we are not. I mean, I can write acid when I want to, same as everyone else.
And, I'm going to open the floor for questions. If you have any questions, think about it. I'm going to come to you. But before that, I want to ask a personal question. It's something that I've faced a lot. When you're a young woman, fairly attractive, also out there on social media, also out there, right, putting your opinions. The publishing industry, spaces like these, it wouldn't be unfair to say that they are patriarchal in a way, and they are also sexist. And women who embrace their sexuality and women who embrace who they are often branded as not literary enough. Is that something that you've gone through, and how do you deal with that sort of branding?
Strangely enough, a lot of very powerful people in publishing happen to be women today. And they have the same antiquated viewpoint and the same stereotyping. And I think they're mimicking male behavior. And it happens a lot. Or there's a certain precedence that's already established within that publishing group, and they just take it forward because they don't want to take chances. And that's a bit cowardly. I believe it's really cowardly, because they should be out there supporting different voices. And today I find the voices of young women like yourself and several who I met, and Anindita, who I think is somewhere in the audience, who wrote the brilliant book, The Illuminati, and several others. So Anukriti, I hope she's here, also a fine and wonderful writer. They should be allowed to speak, write, behave, do exactly as they choose.
Yeah.
And you should never apologize for a thing. Like, I think it was Disraeli who advised his queen, never explain and never defend. Never complain, never explain and never complain. Just follow that in your life, and you will get the recognition that will come to you, because the truth has a way of finding its own path, no matter how hard. Publishers, editors, your own peer group, they try and suppress your voice. It will emerge, and you just have to have that faith in yourself and keep going.
Thank you so much, Shobha. And guys, questions? Oh. Yeah. So the lovely lady with the hat.
Hi, I'm Ritika, and I have known Shobha Day before I have known literature, to be very honest. So when I was publishing my first novel, and it was in my mind that if I was Shobha Day, what would be my perspective when I was reading my own novel? And I just wanted to ask you one question. When you are writing your characters, when you are writing your protagonists, do you also connect with them, or do you have this emotional connectivity with them? And do you also put your life instances with them? Like, it's been long, right?
Yeah, no, lovely question. Uh, Almost without an exception, the female characters present themselves to me and say, here I am. I can hear the voice. It sounds crazy and a little loopy, but I can see them, I can hear them, and they dictate to me what I should be writing about them. And then it's so internalized that the process of writing becomes very complex, but it's a two-way thing. I'm listening to that voice, I'm listening to that lady, I'm visualizing what she'll be wearing, what she'll be eating, where she sleeps, what book she might have. It's all about details. When you're creating a character, that character has to be so vividly visualized by you, the writer, that if you can see that person so clearly and describe that person, your readers will also see that same person, because your skill, your craft as a writer has given them a character they can identify with. Like, I mean, Anna Karenina. It can't be better than that. You cannot, at least for me, it's the ultimate crafting of a memorable, timeless female character in literature.
The gentleman in the back.
Hi, Shobha. Just a small question. So you just mentioned that V.S. Naipaul said that just by reading the first 3 lines, he can tell whether it's a man writing or woman writing. Now, don't know what was the context, or I have not heard him say, but looking at this thing only, what is there to be upset about if someone can just say that man writing or woman writing?
Well, we like to imagine, most writers, that our writing is gender blind, that it's not going to be judged. Oh, it's a woman who's written the book, so already there's a preconceived attitude to that book. And I feel it's somehow demeaning to say it in that way, because I've never heard of an established senior woman writer come up on stage and say it so dismissively that I can tell in the first 3 pages, that this is just a man writing a book. I felt maybe I was being oversensitive, but a lot of other ladies and men also felt the same way at that time.
The gentleman on the right. Yes.
I don't think you'll take it offensive. What is wrong with men? If they need any correction, according to you,
that's a whole book or 10 volumes. बहुत सारी चीजें हैं. I don't think I can cover it all in a lit fest. No, I think men are truly, they are half of who we are, and we are half of who they are. I am not a confrontational person. I do not dislike men. I value their presence in my life. My husband is in the front row, and I know I would have been a very different writer if I didn't have his unconditional support and love and everything. I wouldn't be at this festival feeling so good and showing off like I am right now if he had not been here, because I would have thought, had he not been here and then someone tells him that your wife made an idiot of herself on stage, that would have made me far more nervous. So it's better to have in our lives partners who respect us. The key word is really respect. It's not about disliking men or disliking women. It's just understanding that we have to live together with respect.
The person with the mask. Yeah.
Hi. So when as women we start writing first, there's obviously a lot of internalized patriarchy and a lot of internalized misogyny that we have to kind of like put aside and make sure that our characters and our writing is getting the most out of us. When you started writing, or like, how do you get through that, like as a big barrier?
I did not recognize the barrier. I think that's how I got through it. It never occurred to me that, there's, of course, I lived with the patriarchy like all of us have, but it wasn't something that preoccupied me. I wanted to tell my story. And I think every single human being in the world is a storyteller. And we all have a story to tell. There's no such thing as a boring person. Each story is in itself has a lot of validity. How you tell it, I mean, that sets you apart as a writer of good fiction or a good first person of memoir, but I would never ever underestimate the power of storytelling and our oral traditions in India in particular, and Africa and so many other societies are a testimony to our skills as storytellers. So just go ahead and write your story. Don't worry about patriarchy, matriarchy, nothing. You have a story to tell, write it.
The lady with the cell phone.
Hi, Shobha. This is Seema Dhawan. You have achieved a lot over the years. Which one of your achievement is really that really makes you feel proud of as an individual?
I think that I'm alive to be talking to you these days in a context where what we've gone through has been so tough, and that all of us should feel that that's an achievement in itself, having lived through the worst times, at least during our lifetimes. But the funny thing is, which I was thinking about just before the session, that when I was your age or Gurmehar's age, I would look up to senior writers and say, oh my God, how did he write that? How did she write that? Wow, look at that book. Will I ever be able to write like that? And today I am that senior writer at 74. I mean, who am I going to turn to except for dead writers? You know what I mean? So it's a strange feeling because I feel 74, but on other levels, I feel like a schoolgirl who still has so much to discover and so much excitement. And each day I'm looking for some kind of a crazy adventure, somewhere to go to, you know, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes your body resists, and so it does, you know, but that doesn't mean you cannot kick up your heels and have the best time at whatever age, which is why I wrote, and it was primarily written for ladies. When I wrote Shobhaa at 70, which was 4 years ago, it was to break through that exact stereotype that at 70, you're supposed to be a harmless little old lady sitting on a khatia and knitting booties for your grandchildren. Well, that's not the only option. You have to discover whoever you are and be that person, not what society imposes on you. Like, I find a lot of women in our very conservative society, and in Jaipur, which is also very conservative, it's not Mumbai, for example, and they come up to me and they're so curious in a very charming way. And they really want to know that, how have you managed, you know? It's a question that preoccupies them because their society doesn't allow them to manage anything. And it does not endorse their choices. And it's awful to be living with that kind of repression at all times, whether it's expressed or not expressed. So I even have people come in asking me, "Aapke husband aapko sleeveless pehnne ko allow kaise karte hain?" You know, it is not a silly, trivial question, because clearly within their family, it would be an act of rebellion or something very highly objectionable or questionable. So these are the small fights women have on a daily basis, which you may think are very, very tiny and insignificant, but they are not, because they define how we feel each day when we get up.
Yeah.
And each day that we get up is really precious, and it's a gift. And if there are people around us who are saying we cannot enjoy that gift, then it's a tragedy. And we should all somehow find the strength within us, men and women, to not let that happen to ourselves. Grab the moment, enjoy yourself. Or hey kya, we are here today. We are lucky to be here today. We may not be here tomorrow.
So we have time for one more question. Or we can do more? Okay, so we can have time for 2 more questions. So the lady in pink and then the one in blue.
नमस्ते मैम, मैं सीमा इंगोनी, एडिशनल एसपी इन राजस्थान पुलिस, और मेरे पास यहाँ कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है क्योंकि मेरे सारे क्वेश्चंस के जवाब आपके ऑलरेडी लिटरेचर में मुझे मिल जाते हैं। जब भी मैं उसको पढ़ती हूँ तो वहाँ मुझे जो भी सवाल होता है वो अपने आप ऑटोमेटिकली मिल जाता है। इसलिए मैं आपको प्रेरणा मानते हुए मैंने लिखना शुरू किया है। बहुत सारे हमारे पुलिस में बहुत सारे रियल स्टोरीज होती हैं, उनको मैंने आपसे मोटिवेट होकर लिखना शुरू किया है, और राजस्थान में धीरे धीरे मेरी भी पहचान बन रही है। पर मैं चाहती हूँ कि आपकी तरह मेरी पहचान बने और मैं आपके साथ एक फोटो भी लेना चाहूंगी। थैंक यू मैम।
मैडम जरूर बनेगी। मैं क्या, you'll be much much greater, much higher. आपका लाइफ देखिए और हमारा लाइफ देखिए, उसमें कुछ है ही नहीं। हमारे लाइफ में कुछ नहीं है, आपके लाइफ में सब कुछ है।
Hi, Gurmehar, Shobhaa. So my question is actually to both of you, and I'm really looking forward to both of you just giving me a response to this. So, you both have had there are many things that are in common between the two of you. And one thing that is in common that possibly cannot be romanticized or, idealized in a way is the way in which certain forces in our country have been aggressive towards the both of you, right? And we've seen it, through social media and through opinion pieces and stuff about you. And I just want to understand that, how is it something that has ever shaken you so much that you've ever thought that, that's it, I don't think I can write again, and it's possible that this is it for me, and I don't think I can do this anymore. And if you are like that, because like I said, you can't romanticize the fact that sometimes there are systems against you, right? And you are a target. So how do you get out of that? And what would your advice be to people who are not necessarily the voices of today's system, but who have a story to share nonetheless?
I think, I mean, I would 100% agree. And, like you said, not romanticize the struggle at all. A lot of people will go on and, Shobha ma'am has been kind to say, you've been brave. And I think there is, there are, people can sometimes romanticize it. But it has been incredibly hard. But I think the way for me to have been able to get out of it has been being able to build brilliant support systems of women who support me. And I think, and I admire Shobha ma'am so much for it. In the 45-minute, 50-minute conversation that we've had, she has gone out of her way to uplift more younger female writers. And I think I found, not just with Shobha ma'am, with my classmates in college, with my peer groups, with my teachers and my professors, I found a lot of, I think finding a community and finding people who back you and have faith in you, very important. I think then everything else is just noise. But ma'am.
Well, I can only say, having had police protection for 2.5 years, which wasn't fun at all, that you have to stand up for what you believe in. It's as simple as that. It's not easy. There's no romance in it at all. But if you do not stand up for that, then believe me, you're going to be crushed. There are forces far bigger than all of us. And I have been attacked not by only this present government, previous governments, the governments before that, local administrations, political groups who don't like me for what I stand for, etc. So it would have been very easy to at some stage say, okay, white flag guys, I'm out of this. But no, I hope till my last breath, as long as I'm writing, I will continue to just be myself and stand for what I believe in and stand for it firmly and not let anyone bully me. I mean, bullies are cowards, I mean, I will never back down to anyone, any political party or any other kind of party trying to browbeat me and tell me what I should be thinking or what I should be writing. And that is a given.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Shobha Day, for this wonderful conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, playing on the name, stellar session, starry panel about love, life, struggle, and so much more. We thank our speakers, Shobha Day and Gurmehar Kaur, and request them to accept a small token of our love and appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, stellar days, starry nights. We also thank Red FM for their support in presenting this session. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of this session. We will be back shortly at 4. First edition, Meghna, the River of Victory. It is